Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan, with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Apologies, I had some audio issues, and Lucian had some video issues, and so we were trying to last minute figure everything out. So this is the Saturday Morning Technical Difficulty Show.
But we're
5
here.
minutes.
Yeah. Every week. Every week. Yeah. But we were gone last week. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. I suppose a lot of stuff. I've been sick. So for those of you who watched the Great Modron March, we canceled on Thursday because I was not doing well. And then Wednesday I was homesick and I just slept all day and played Steam Deck and it was great. And then Friday I started feeling a little better, and by today I'm like, I could probably do a show. So, but I'm still coughing and hacking and what have you. But the big news is we have more playtest material for One D&D.
That's right.
And I have given it a solid go over. But I haven't seen all of the stuff that they've really changed. We knew that they were going to divide spell lists into arcane, divine, and primal. And some of those spells cross-pollinate. So I think, like, Healing Word is a divine spell, but it also could be a primal spell, kind of a thing like that. I forget. But there are those spells that cross-pollinate between the two. But what was interesting is they gave us, like, all the way up to 9th level spells, but some other stuff. So I basically got to the rules glossary, so I can talk a little bit about the expert classes, but I don't have that much information on the rest of the stuff there. I did watch a couple live streams of people going through it. I saw that those were doing very popular on the YouTubes. Have you had a chance to look at it, Mr. Lucian?
So I listened to the videos that they put out, because they did put the videos out on the Wizards of the Coast site, Dungeons & Dragons site, on YouTube, like a day before they released the actual material, which I thought was a little bit smarter, except they were talking like it was already out. And I thought it would have made it clearer if they would have said, we're about to put this out tomorrow, we're going to talk about it today, kind of thing. But I like that we get to hear, Jeremy's ideas about what they're trying to do with the test and what's in it and what's going on. And then you see the test before they put the product out, and then they try to put a video out to tell you, to frame your state of mind when you read it. So they're almost there. They've almost got it. But I was able to watch the videos. I've read through a little bit of the they call it expert classes, and I wish they would have named it expert group instead of like expert classes, because everybody kind of made that assumption that different classes or expert classes or another tier of classes or what is this. And then when you jump into it, it's just a category group of, ranger, bard, and thief put together. And then I guess artificer will be added in as a thing in there that says if you have Tasha's, artificers included. So those are the things I've read. I've read a little bit about the feats. I saw some feat changes. I saw a little bit about those classes and subclasses, and that's as far as I've got. But I know they also put out the rule compendium, which has some rule stuff too. So
yeah,
lots of stuff to go over.
There is lots of stuff to go over. It's pretty crazy. And I apologize. So you were very much echoed through that entire thing, and that was on my bad. But I fixed it. And I believe we're good. But the audio is not synced, and that is probably because it's going through so many other filters. This is not my day.
Well, and the reason is we were playing around. You were playing with new settings and stuff for your show. And then on last Sunday when we didn't do a show, I decided to stream playing World of Warcraft. So I changed my stream settings. And I think so when we got to today, stuff's interfering. And I'm figuring it out as we're talking.
Yeah, and that's the problem is I'm also figuring it out. This was working so well the other day.
Yeah,
but not
we
today.
had it, but it was just so close.
Not today.
Almost there.
We might just be out of sync, guys. I'm not sure. As long as you can hear us, we're probably just going to have our video not like totally sync up. So, and I apologize, but that's kind of what we have right now. Yeah, they were like, "You're going into a black hole, Lucian," and I was like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry."
Not the black hole.
Not the black hole. But yeah, I like specifically the class grouping I thought was kind of fun. And this harkens back to 4th edition where you had controllers. I think they were leaders, like leaders, controllers, and strikers. And maybe there was another one for like tanks or something. I can't remember. But if you were a striker, then your class was very much like high burst damage on one target. And if you were a controller, you did a lot of things like manipulate the battlefield. And so paladins could be controllers because they could pull people out of the way or soak damage or kind of like adjust monsters on the battlefield. Wizards were controllers because they could also like move people around and things like that. And it was just kind of cool. So all of that. And then we have, and it seems like they're doing a similar thing where you have Bard, Ranger, Rogue are experts, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard are mages. Not to the degree of 4th edition where it's really like, this is your play style, but now you could have a feat that says this feat is just for mages, or this feat is just for priests or something. And I like that. I think that's kind of cool because it simplifies the text. And there's a lot of simplifying the text. As I go through here, like a lot of the bard changes are just kind of like, oh, well, that makes sense. And that's kind of cool. And they got rid of a lot of different things like, what was it? Like cutting words or something. You can deduct the amount of, like you roll your bardic inspiration and you subtract it from the attack to see if it hits kind of a thing. And a lot of and that might still be in there later on. I'm not really sure. But with this bardic inspiration, they're just like if somebody takes damage, you can roll that and heal it. So it kind of is, well, it's not similar as cutting words because you're like negating the attack with cutting words. But I like the idea of you're not subtracting, you're not doing all this other stuff. It's just like, well, I'm going to do this on top of what you did kind of a thing. And it has the same outcome in the end of I'm negating damage. But it just feels like it just feels cleaned up. And I kind of like that. Short sword is now not a martial weapon, if I'm understanding this. So they're changing how the weapons are classified. Well, it's just a basic weapon. I don't think it was a basic weapon before.
So you could get it right away.
So anybody who has basic weapon expertise, which is all classes, I think, could use a short sword, which is kind of nice. And then, yeah, I don't know. They have a lot of stuff underlined, and I think the underlined stuff is like what they're changing, or like we should look into that. Teleportation magic, swim speed. Yeah, this was a lot of things. I did not do my homework, guys. I was sick. I feel really bad. I also really like they call it armor training because it's no longer armor proficiency, because then people were kind of like, well, do I add my proficiency to my armor? I don't really know. And so now it's like they call it training. And again, this is all just kind of, let's clean up the language. But it's like, hey, the training is here because you either have training in it or you don't. And it's light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, and shield. So, like, can you use a shield is part of armor training. But was that in 5e? Like, is shield a separate proficiency? I don't remember. I thought it was just, like, bundled in with... It probably is. Because I feel like you could have light armor and shield, but you can't necessarily have... I think it's always bundled with heavy armor, but I was wondering about that.
Yeah, and it made it sound like they wanted to... I feel like the changes are a way to get the weapons to fit not only with the classes they're talking about and who they want the classes to get them in the beginning proficiencies, like your shield proficiency that you're talking about, but also to fit the new way they want to do the feats. And so that they match the feats, because they've really reorganized how kind of some of those feats are working. And I think Shield has a kind of a rework and a rewording, because so many people were taking things like Shield Master and these other things, and it wasn't quite clear, you know, where some of those things were, right? Yeah. So it's like it was kind of a little confusing in some ways when you took some of those. So I'm interested to see. It's so many changes that I'm trying to remember which ones are which, without having a direct comparison, like going back and forth, like I'm sure somebody has done. but off of just what I was reading, it was just like little minor changes so that they work better with feats, or it makes more sense. Just like the prime example of this was they were talking about the feat for Spell Sniper, and one of the comments was, well, I'm so glad that I don't have to take Crossbow Expert now with my Spell Sniper, because what they did is they moved the one little piece in Crossbow Master that said if you're within 5 feet of an enemy, you don't get disadvantage for shooting at.
Oh.
For shooting whilst within 5 feet of an enemy. So what people were doing is they were taking, they were shooters, they were archers or they were spellcasters, but they didn't want that disadvantage. So they would dip into Crossbow Expert to get the thing they needed so they could fire their spells within 5 feet of somebody, or fire their bow or crossbow or whatever.
A ranged spell within 5 feet.
But still take sharpshooter or spell.
Because a ranged attack and a ranged spell attack okay, that makes sense.
So they split that out. So they're recognizing some of these feats that were worded weird, and you were trying to get specific things for it because you had no other option. It's not like you could go to another spot where all the spellcaster feats were and you could pick that up. It was only in this Crossbow Expert for some reason, right? It wasn't even in Sharpshooter. So now it's in Sharpshooter. Now it's in Spell Sniper. Now it's in those. So it's things like that. Or even when they were talking about how they changed like durable, and they wanted to make these feats. He said they went, Jeremy in the video said they've went back to every single feat that they've ever shown in the book, and they're reworking or rethought about them or had a meeting about them to say, is this doing what we want it to do? Should we reword it in some way to make it so that it's not just a feat that nobody would take because the way it's written doesn't make any sense? So they started adding in things that would make you consider taking it. So like I think the durable one is the example of, they said in that one they added a piece where, like, I don't know, as a bonus action.
It says as a bonus action, you can expend one of your hit dice, roll it, and then regain that number of hit points. Yeah. So that was that makes it compelling versus what it was before, right? So if you read the before one, it says advantage on death saving throws. Yeah. And I'm noticing a lot of these also have increase your con or increase your dex by 1. So if you want to have that cool thing, you're not also limited by, but I don't get...
But I just want my +1 ability score. So I'm getting both. I'm getting ability score, which I want to increase, but I'm getting a benefit that I enjoy or can use somehow
which
with
is
my
something
character.
I looked at feats, and I really like feats that do that, because when you're optimizing as a player, like you look a lot and you're like, well, you're right, I could put 2 in here, but it's going to bump it to a 17 instead of a 15. I really just want to put 1 in there, and then I would be okay getting, an extra thing. Like, I don't need 2 ability score improvements this level. Next level maybe I do, but
right. And so it definitely sounds like this version. I like what you said, because when you started talking about this, reminds me a little bit of a 4th edition, and I get that sense a little bit too, that they're gamifying, codifying certain things that we either house ruled or table ruled or interpreted in such a way that we thought that's what it was. And I think they're going back and really making sure that says what it is, but also expanding feats, because you're going to get class feats at certain levels, and you're going to have class specific feats, or you might have class group specific feats like you mentioned, and then reworking the feats that exist so that they match, knowing you're going to be getting class feats and class group feats and all these other things that you might be able to choose. And another big change was taking the level 20 capstone ability and moving it to level 18, and then allowing you like a list of level 20, or no, it was like you could take epic boons or something.
Yeah, they have a whole bunch of like they turned like epic boons into feats is what it kind of looks like.
So one thing I would recommend everybody do, because you're going to get a lot of hot takes, you're going to get a lot of video stuff on it today. One thing that I thought was super important that they said is, be sure that as you're reading the playtest rules, they are adjusting some rules from the previous playtest for this playtest. An example is the crit roll rule.
Yeah.
They went back to original playtest of the crit roll rule during this portion of the playtest. When you were doing the other crit roll rule, that was during the other playtest they had just done before this one. So I think that's going to be a little confusing if you don't keep track of that. So you might want to just be sure that you're checking the rule set that they want you to test while they're giving you the options of classes or subclasses or whatever, because they're trying to specifically say, what do you think of this combination of things? Give us your feedback on this. And it's very clear that they're going to throw some stuff in that could be wildly too powerful or not enough, just to see what feedback is coming back. So don't jump on this like, oh my God, they're changing D&D and we're never going to like it. It's going to be the worst thing ever. It's a test of what happens if we put a parameter to this level. What give real feedback, not just your theory crafting feedback, like your real, I play tested it, we tried it out, we rolled through it a couple of times to see what happened, test, and then give the feedback on it, and then they can evaluate, where can we put it, where could we tone it down, do we take it out, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think from my limited knowledge of playtesting, a lot of times I've heard that you do make it way too powerful, because then you can actually see like, oh, not only is this fun, but like, okay, it's overpowered to the point where everybody's going to choose this. But now that you know that it's like it's a positive reaction overall, you just need to like crank the volume down a little bit. And that's a lot easier than being like, I don't know, I guess it was okay. Well, was it okay because it was underpowered? Or, and so now you need to know like, oh, they do like this. We just have to lower it. So
and if you put it at a 10 and you see where the problems are, because you saw what the 10 was, I think you can make a better judge of what does it look like when it's a 9, what does it look like when it's an 8, what does it look like when it's a 7, because we went all the way to the extreme and said this is where it really breaks, and see how it breaks and why it breaks. And now that we know that, we know how to tune it so it won't break, because we know what happens when it breaks. If it's too underpowered and it's not really used and utilized, you don't know where the breaking point would be. So you don't have an idea of where you could tune it to, because you don't know where it's going to break. So I agree with you on that. And I think that comes from you test things. So you have a testing mind. Your job had been,
I was a QA for a long time,
right? So you have the mindset of this. I don't think everybody that has a YouTube channel out there that's putting videos out on D&D rule changes has the test mind mentality, which is what they really should have if you're going to be taking part in the One D&D playtest. But hey,
another thing, you're right. And actually that brings up something that I was talking about with some other friends, is that we're calling this a playtest, and yes, some people are probably playing and running this, but the vast amount of people that are submitting the responses to Wizards of the Coast are not playing it. They're reading it, or they're watching another YouTuber read it, and they're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then they give their opinion. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong, because I think Wizards of the Coast knows this. And specifically, they have internal playtesters. They have a core team of NDA signed people that are also actively running this stuff. I think the purpose of this is transparency, and to understand like, oh, they really don't like it when we took crits away from dungeon masters. And I do think that's what it is. So it's good. I think you should go out, and I think you should do the play it if you want, but at least read it and then give your hot take feedback, because part of that feedback is just like, oh, and then maybe later on you can actually play it and be like, oh, I was wrong. This actually works really well, or something. Who knows? But I think you're 100% right. Don't look at this and say, oh, this is going to be...
this is what the rules
this
are.
Is like in stone. It's not at all.
We're not playing, D&D 16.
But moral, it's like, do you like the feel of this? And that's kind of what I was thinking, because it's like, I like the feel of the bard changes. I think the language is kind of cleaned up, and it just kind of like, oh, no, that kind of makes sense. And more flexibility with magical secrets, where you're not choosing one or two spells that you have forever. You're choosing a spell list, and you can kind of take extra spells from that spell list. And I thought that was fun. So I don't know. I like it so far. And I think it does backwards compatible work very well, in the sense, I was also talking to people where, but that they keep saying everything's going to be backwards compatible. Like it's still going to work with 5th edition. And I'm like, guys, I think we need to understand that it's, when they say that, what they're really saying is these new characters can work in older versions or older adventures that we've published for 5th edition. But I don't think you could make we'll see when this finally comes out, but I don't think you could make a Player's Handbook 1 original, like 2014 Player's Handbook, like Ranger, and have it do really, really well in a new adventure that they publish that has a lot of these new features and stuff. Simply because these are going to be more powerful characters than before. So,
I feel like that's what I see too. I feel like the characters are gaining power overall, just as a medium. It doesn't feel like this is a pull the character power down thing. This is a characters are improving, if not staying the same, but at least improving if anything is changing. And then the other thing, I feel like there's complexity being added in, which is, I think, my first take is great because I love complexity, but I'm also a player that's been here since the beginning of 5e now, and so more complexity and more options are things that I want because I've been playing for so long. But I do wonder, where do we hit that point again where somebody who's new comes in and we've got 5 pages of feats. We were talking about a little bit with Pathfinder 2e. There are so many feats you can choose in Pathfinder, and there are so many different things you can do in the Pathfinder class build that you're starting to inch towards, is this too complicated for somebody who's not played, or not? Or are we there yet? Or are we close?
Well, and I already feel like we're there for 5e, because when I introduced D&D at the beginning, it was like, here's the Player's Handbook, and you had here's my, I want to be a ranger, or I'll use ranger. Like, I want to be a ranger, and they're like, here are your 3 options. And you're like, oh. And at level 3, you were like, okay, yeah, I really like using my bow in levels 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to choose this. But nowadays, I'll start with new players, and it's a prime example of our new player at my Black Company game, because we started him at level 5. Because he wanted to like join us, and he's like, well, I think I want to do a warlock. And they're like, okay, well, here, and he's looking at D&D Beyond, and it's like, well, here's the thousands of warlock options. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll take this. Well, now you need to choose between all of these different spells. And he doesn't even realize that he had 2 spell slots a day because he doesn't understand how spell slots work yet. Yeah. And so he's choosing stuff, and I'm sure our DM will let him change anything he wants if he's not having fun. But I just see the confusion in his face a lot, because it's like, and now here's all of these, the Eldritch Invocations. And that was like, well, what are these? And he's so confused by them, So I think we're already there, because you start adding, Xanathars and Tashas and all of these other things, and have it all on D&D Beyond, where it's a drop-down menu that's just way too big. It's a little daunting. I feel daunted when I'm like leveling up as my artificer now, because I have all of these weird options that I have to create, and artificer infusions and stuff. And it's like, this is a lot.
Or somebody says, hey, do you want to play a quick one shot? You can make a 10th level character. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, let me go grab my 5 books, because I can do Bolos, I could do Tashas, I could do all this stuff. And you're like, oh, now I need my spell list, 10th level spell list. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Which kind of goes back to how I like viewing one shots of, hey, I'm going to run this. Here's where you can, here's the items that you can do. But unfortunately in D&D Beyond, it's hard to limit that, where everybody sees everything, and so they start choosing spells, and they're like, I don't know, it's on D&D Beyond. It's like, well, what book is it from? I don't know. Like,
and I feel like I either read an article or I watched a video from somewhere that talked about D&D as it is, 5th edition, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition, is not the books are not written in a way that somebody who has no idea about role-playing could pick that book up by themselves and teach themselves how to play. This game has always been, and which probably is why always will be, something that has to be taught to you by somebody who already knows, and the books are there to clarify or dig a little deeper once somebody has helped you understand what's going on. And this is not a hobby that you just pick up on your own. Typically, you have to have somebody help you get into it.
And I think that's why the rise of podcasting and streaming really ignited this fire, because like the game is good, but not everybody had that weird uncle who was willing to teach you how to play D&D. And so I never would have got into it unless a friend of mine was like, hey, like you should, I'll run a game for you. And I'm like, okay. And we were like hooked. I was like, this is amazing. I've never experienced this before. Now people can be like, if you're interested, go listen to Critical Role or go do this. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, you know, and that's the more I was listening to podcasts, the more I'm like, I'm going to learn how to play because So I don't know. Is that just RPGs, do you think? Or is that just D&D? I wonder. Like,
I think it's hard. Like if you have never played role playing,
Powered by the Apocalypse, would I be able to read Monster of the Week and know how to do it?
I
Maybe
don't know
not.
how to play
I don't know.
it very well.
Yeah, well,
Only somebody who knew how to play Powered by the Apocalypse could explain to me how moves work and when moves should work and how a DM should handle it. Because when I read it, I was like, what are they even talking about here on how, because it's so abstract. And it's so like, you can do anything. Well, that's the problem. I can do anything. And I'll pull the moon out of the sky. Well, you can't do that. It's like, well, wait a minute. What can I do?
That's our go-to. We always kind of talk about that. Like,
I think so. That one's a tough one too. Even though it's a trimmed down version of rules, when you do understand them, it's less rules than say Pathfinder 2e or Dungeons and Dragons. But still, just come at it from any. The only thing I could think of that you could play, I don't even think Numenera. There's some esoteric kind of things that Monty puts in his thing about how the pools work and how, pushing things or adding things in that I don't know if you're going to get until you see it in action or somebody kind of explains a good example to you with the book. I think it's one of those things you have to have somebody who kind of knows it and understands it and then helps a person along to teach it the very basics, and then the books help you master it, help you understand it truly after you have some foundation from somebody showing you kind of what to do or how to do something.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Yeah, and I mean that's probably a lot of board games too, because I'm trying to think of how many times I've gotten a board game and I have read through the rule book and then we sat down and played it, and then we got through a game,
realizing we
3 days later you rerun it and you're like, oh, this is completely different. I'm actually thinking back to like my middle school days when Pokemon the card game came out. And I loved Pokemon. I was in middle school. Like, Pokemon's awesome. Pokemon's still awesome, guys. I'm playing. Oh, it's upstairs.
You're wearing a Zelda shirt. Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm playing Pokemon Emerald as casually. It's just been a lot of fun because it's one of my favorites. But Pokemon the card game came out and we wanted to play it so bad, so we bought these cards. We kind of like sort of read through the rules and then we fought, but we didn't really understand how like evolution worked, and we're like, I don't know. And we had never played a card game before, never played Magic, never played anything like that. I don't understand what collectible card games are, but I know that this foil thing is probably better than your Pikachu, so I'm going to throw that down. And then it's like, well, can you do that? I think so. So we had no real idea how to play. But that was like a lot of self-teaching, a lot of going to the mall and finding other people playing and learning and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shared experience. It's a shared learning hobby. And there are materials to help you dive deeper. But
the internet helps a lot now. Like, we didn't have that back in... Yeah, well, the internet was there in middle school, but like being able to go to YouTube and watch somebody explain how Pokemon TCG works is really awesome.
Yeah. So, what that specific rule is. What does it mean when it says, like you just said that word that I didn't even recognize? It was like, okay, what does that word mean in Pokemon? What does that word mean in, what does trample mean in Magic the Gathering? What could that possibly
Wait a minute. So I do what with the plumbus? Like, what's a plum? Anyway, so good. There's a new action called Study. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of going through this, but it's like when you take the study action, you make an intelligence check to study your memory, a book, a creature, an object, and then you can get important information about it. I think that's really cool, and I didn't know. Like they're kind of making. Well, we knew this. They were talking about everything being an action, and they even have like some social interactions in here where it's like, how does the creature's attitude is going to give you like disadvantage or something on certain checks or something. Like if they're hostile to you, you can't do this. Or if you make a check, it might sway it from hostile to indifferent or something. It's kind of interesting in how the responses are. I don't know, like it seems cleaned up. I guess that's all I need to say. I've said it before.
I think they are going a little bit more in depth on things that were maybe worded a little vaguely. So that allows us to get a better understanding of what they meant versus us trying to figure out what did they mean. Because you always hear that term, rules as written, because that term exists because so many rules were taken as interpreted or how we thought they wanted. And they're
rules
like,
as intended versus
the rule
rules
as written is this, so it's like it's trying to kind of get a little bit to that. And I think it's going to be more complex. I'm really interested to see how they organize all of this and turn it into a new, how do we make our new characters? But I do like certain things, like even just the way they've put the, ranger, class group, expert, primary abilities, and they're kind of reorganizing the information in a way that's easier to get to. Your hit points are this. You get spell casting at first level. I mean, that should be the big news right now, is it sounds like Ranger's really getting the love and the attention that everybody's been screaming about, or at least the people who thought Ranger was broken, which is
the people who love Ranger.
Yeah.
And I do. I've played a few Rangers and I've had fun with all of them, but when you're in a party, I'm going to say this, a prime example right now is the difference between min-maxers and just kind of regular players, I should say this. And Ted, Nerd Immersion Ted, he's my friend. I love him to death. He's also a min-maxer. He likes doing that. He doesn't think it's a bad word. I don't necessarily think it's a bad word, but he enjoys playing with the mechanics of the game.
Yes.
And we get into fights, and Lagwin in Great Modron March will pull out his lightsaber and freaking do all this damage and take 0 damage because he has shield and all this other stuff. And then I just feel really bad because then LB runs in there and she does her one shot and it does some sneak attack damage, but it's not even near the level that Lagwin's doing. And so she's kind of like, I helped, but she doesn't care. She's having fun. But if you're that player who's you have a Lagwin in your party and you're a Beastmaster Ranger from 2014 PHB, you're probably looking at yourself like, what is happening? This is a tangent. But I got a company contacted me, Draco Studios, to do a review of their upcoming 5th edition setting, which I made a video about. And it's there's a mechanic in there where you kind of fuse yourself with a dragon. And then your party can have this dragon that follows you around and grows with your party. And it's kind of cool. So you have this extension pet. Something that from that I thought was really cool is you and your dragon's hit points are now combined and tied. So if I have 50 hit points and my pet has 50 hit points, we now have 100 hit points. If I get hit by something, that 100 goes down. So technically, I could tank something and have 100 hit points and my dragon could never get hurt. Or if we're together in an AoE and my dragon takes 15 hit points and I take 15 hit points, then we collectively just took 30 hit points worth of damage because it's shared between us. I want that for pets in 5. Well, they're doing it for their 5e, but I like the idea of that for a ranger. The pet ranger should be that way when you go down, your pet goes down. And that when your pet goes down, you go down. And instead of this I got to track his hit points and all this other stuff, I was like, you guys need to just have combined hit points. It's so simple. And it seemed like it would just fix the rangers so good. Pet rangers, I should say.
At least the pet. Yeah. The pet.
That's my tangent. Anyway, no, I'm really excited about this. This is a lot better response than the first one. And I know the first one was just... everyone was complaining about critical hits and stuff, but I wonder if that was also intentional to get the news going. So they're like, oh, well, I better see what they mess up this time around. I think they're playing us a little bit more than we think about. So
that could be. Well, and I even in the sticking with the Ranger thing here, they were talking about Hunter's Mark being no longer
a
your
spell
bonus
you
action.
already know. Yeah. And it
doesn't count against, and that's been a big thing that they're going back.
It's almost
and
like an ability now. Yeah.
How your bonus actions are being taken, because if I did that, it really didn't allow me to do other abilities you gave me in the class that were bonus action based. Yeah. And in my game, where I am a min-maxing Aarakocra Arcane Archer / cleric who has sharpshooter on his bow but wants to put hunter's mark out on something. I was like, I got hunter's mark off of an ability off my weapon because my DM recognized that if he gave me just the spell, it would be a bonus action spell. I would never use it because I have 8 million other things I'm using my bonus action for, like double fighting, or swinging 2 swords and getting a 3rd sword in, or use my bonus action to cast one of my clerical bonus action spells, or I have channel divinity stuff, or all these things that might take that bonus action, but I have to have hunter's mark out there. So it's like this. It was just a terrible choice, and he made that kind of house table rule or magic
just to like
that
make it
allowed
fun. Yeah,
and the weapon has the concentration. That was the other thing. It has concentration. Cool. So if you wanted hunter's mark, not only did you have to use your bonus action, you had to use your concentration up as a ranger. That was
well, and that's not, to me, that's not a huge deal, but it is when you start thinking about a lot of the ranger spells are concentration because you don't have a lot of spell slots. So you're like, I want a longer lasting ability. And so all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't use, I'm trying to think of like Zephyr Strike, or I can't use this. Right. Like all of these cool things you want to do because you are concentrating on Hunter's Mark, and that's frustrating.
Yeah.
So.
And I think Rogue would have ran into some of that too. I think there are ones that are bonus action heavy classes that may have had a feature that was so good there's no way you couldn't use it. So that always took your bonus action up, which left you never really using the other stuff that they gave you an option for, because you just can't give up the 1d6 of dice, or you can't just give up knowing where your opponent is or something like that. So they're definitely looking at it. So I think that's interesting that they're going back and they're trying to really look at action economy, really look at the bonuses you're getting and how your class is going to kind of synergize with those things. And it seems like more, so I feel like complication is moving upward, but I feel like it is too stuff that I'm going to really enjoy playing. And all of it was like, ooh, can I play with this in my character right now in my campaign? Because that sounded pretty good. Like all the in our chat for our game for Dungeon of the Mad Mage, there was a bunch of our guys saying, ooh, I really like how 2-weapon fighting works now. Or, ooh, look at light weapons and how that works now. Oh, let's look at this. I like that.
I really like the thief in this for some reason, because it made me feel like an original thief from like OSE or BXD&D. The fact that you can use any spell scroll, and you just have that ability to cast spell scroll from a spell scroll. So you don't have any innate magic, but I can cast from a scroll. That opens up a whole myriad of things where it's like, okay, I actually want to be that intelligent thief that is all about stealing magic items and stuff. And they have, you can get up to 4 attuned magic items at level 10. You get an extra bonus action at level 14 where you can only use it to do dash disengage, but like it's still very like, I mean, bonus actions are awesome, and you only get 1. And a lot of times it's like, if I had 2 bonus actions, I could stack so many things. And so this way it's like you're not missing out on the dashing or disengaging when you want to use that other action for whatever reason. So I don't know. I'm excited. We should probably talk about something else though too, but
well, that was the big news.
I think it was good. This is very positive from my point of view, I guess. And so I don't feel like this is not a jump from 3rd edition to 4th edition kind of changes. They are very happy with the direction 5th edition is going, and they're going to move it forward. So I think that's. So
you're saying this is, from what I heard you just said, you think this is more of a 5.5 E?
If we're gonna call it that, yeah. I think the basics
more is what
the basics of 5th edition, action, bonus action, like a lot of the words they feel cleaned up rather than a whole new edition.
Here's new
and with AD&D 2nd edition and this one, they went from a roll under D20 to a roll over. A lot of abilities were percentile based. They all changed that to a D20. So like that felt like a big jump as well. Yeah. But this doesn't feel like a big jump. So. And
even the spell lists, you get to the bottom and they reorganize the spell lists into arcane spell lists.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden it's not just here's your druid list, here's your mage, your wizard list, here's your sorcerer list. It's you go and pick from the divine spell grouping That gives you a lot more options than you had before if you get a spellcasting ability that lets you choose from one of these larger groupings. So that is a subtle but big change to creating characters all of a sudden too, because you could have felt really constrained on what you could pick, where this kind of opens up a lot of that. So even that primal spells and these things. So I'm curious to see. I think what we should do is, when there's not news, like for next week's show, pick 1 or 2 items out of here that just seem interesting and talk about those items, and then we'll just talk about one item here or there as we go until they give us the next one, which is the next big release of stuff, because this is so big you can't even use one show to cover it all. I mean, there can't even be one video to cover it all, let alone...
Ted did a 4-hour live stream.
Tried.
So yeah.
Ted would try.
He was like, hey, if you're bored while you're sick, you could watch my 4-hour live stream. I'm like, you didn't stream. Oh my God, you did. You streamed for 4 hours on this topic, but that's his shtick, he went into it. So, but I guess what I wanted to come away with is I'm very positive about this. I think it's really cool. And you guys got to remember that you can always play the older stuff. Like, I know it's kind of I'm working on a video now where I'm like, you don't need somebody to we don't need somebody to convert Curse of Strahd, or I should say Ravenloft, into Curse of Strahd so I can play it for 5th edition. Just play that, but use whatever rules you want. And I like this idea of if I want to run an Eberron game, I could run it with Monster of the Week if I do enough tweaking. It might be more work, but you don't need other people to do it for you. So
it is more. I've run some 2E modules inside my 5E campaign because I enjoyed the storyline, the stuff that was set out. And yes, I did have to do work on converting the monsters and converting a few of the magic item things. But once I got that done, and it didn't take me too long, I was able to run a very fun, cool, 2nd edition adventure inside my 5th edition campaign that worked just great. And I've used stuff. I've used Numenera adventures in my 5e.
Yeah.
So
it's fun. And that was kind of my point, is I'm doing that with Great Modron March now, and it's we're having a lot of fun. So I am behind on MCDM's Arcadias. I don't think I've read 19 and I might not have read 18.
Oh my Lord.
But what's going on with Arcadia?
So I saw Arcadia 20 was out. I saw Matt Colville had posted about it, and it has a shield bearer fighter subclass in it that sounded pretty cool, with lots of shield type things and effects to make you feel like a real strong shield fighter, which I don't think you get in 5e without dipping into feats. You have to get to feats to make you feel like you can.
Which the fighter gets a lot of feats, because my Warforged was a shield centric kind of fighter,
and that's if your DM allows the optional rule of feats. Because if you're playing just 5e as the rules are, feats aren't necessarily in that. It's an optional rule. So I think most games use them, but not everybody uses them. I've played a few games where there's been no feats, so it's been interesting. They added in more interesting NPCs to add to your game, and then a secret organization for you to use that sounded pretty cool. So just a nice little grouping
I like that.
Of different things.
Here's an organization, you can put it in any city. Those are invaluable to me. So
yeah, little cool. I feel like this is the kind of Dungeons and Dragons magazine, the Dragon magazine, that I want and wish we had back from the 80s and 90s, when there were magazines out doing, Dungeons, and the other one was Dragon. And those were two great magazines that you could flip through and just find some little small tidbit that you loved in it.
Because the one that Wizards of the Coast made, which was Dragon Plus, right?
Dragon Plus, yeah.
And they got rid of that pretty much, I think, because they bought D&D Beyond, and they're like, this does exactly what we need Dragon Plus to do. We can put up articles on it and things like that, but that was not nearly as helpful as some of those older Dragon magazines.
I still have my old Dragon magazines that I love to flip through, and there's all kinds.
I've got scans of just about all of them because they're fun and they're full of lore. There was a whole they just be like, hey, Keith Baker, tell us something cool about Eberron, and he's like, oh, okay, and he'd write an article for him, and it wouldn't have any monster stats. It would just be here's what's going on in this region of the world. I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah, or it'd be like, hey, do you ever hear of Star Elves? Here's Star Elves. You can add this to your campaign. There's a whole thing on these brand new elves that you'd never heard of. So yeah, I always liked lore articles. Usually it was new mechanics, new tables, new rollable tables. They would have adventures in there, small adventures. They have monsters every now and then. Yeah.
The last Arcadia I bought was 14. I'm way behind.
No. You're way behind.
I can't wait till he binds these into a giant book, though.
Like an anthology.
I want the anthology, cool. Like so bad.
That'd be cool.
And it's really great. Lots of
artwork looks good.
Yeah, lots of great authors.
Quality.
Like,
yeah, that'd be very cool.
Yeah, that's Chili Dog. Did you see Chili there? Hey, Chili.
Chili Dog.
That's the new puppy.
Not
She's
Oscar.
pretty cute.
It's Chili.
Oscar. She's ruling the roost though, because that's Oscar's pillow, and she's kicked Oscar out of that pillow several times. Mostly because Oscar is just old man dog, and he's like, I don't care, and so he like wanders over, and there's another pillow over there that he sleeps at, but he's like, I was like, that's his spot, dog. What are you doing?
That's awesome. Other than that, for our Paizo fans out there, our Pathfinder 2e fans, we've already mentioned a little bit. I noticed that one thing that might be exciting for a lot of people, and I know they probably already know about it, but I'll mention it. Kingmaker, which was a really popular adventure path for Pathfinder 1, is coming to Pathfinder 2e. So they are doing a converted version to Pathfinder 2e, and you should look at the cover art on it because it looks really good. So you can do Kingmaker Adventure, which is one of the really cool big ones that are out there. Plus, there's a video game on it and all that. So it's one of their most popular.
It was like, I think that was on my Steam sale the other day. So
yeah. So I thought that was really cool. They also announced this week they were doing their May 2023 announcements. They were putting some stuff out on their webpage, on their Twitter, and during some of their live streams that they do, because they've been doing some weekly live stream stuff. And so what they have coming out is an adventure called the Enmity Cycle. I hate that word. They said it might change. The name still might change. For Pathfinder 2e, that's an adventure coming out. And Starfinder has Ports of Call coming out in May of 2023. So they're starting to tell us a little bit about the stuff that's going to be coming out next summer already. And I'm sure they'll release more of that. So more books coming for Pathfinder 2e. Kingmaker looks like a very interesting one. This one is a large adventure that is really about, do you want your group to become embroiled in the creation of something that you could codify as like a kingdom? Like, are they going to have a barony or a kingdom or a, world kind of owning, land owning kind of adventure where you start from scratch and you kind of build up? So if that's the type of campaign you would love to run and be a part of, Kingmaker is kind of the Pathfinder version of that, and soon to be Pathfinder 2e version of it, which is interesting. And I'll probably buy the Pathfinder 2e version because I'm still super into 2e at the moment.
Yeah, you made a character, right? Like you were talking about, you want me to make a character with you. That'd be fun.
I do. I was thinking you and we're gonna get a few of our other players that have played other systems, like our OSR group of people that we kind of play with, and say, all right, let me run you through this the way the book reads it. And then
Jordan forces them to play Invisible Sun group. Is that what you're referring
to? Yeah.
Forces is not the right word. We had a lot of fun with that, but yeah.
No, we like to test those things out, and I thought it was fun. And I think it was interesting, and I'd like to hear some opinions after you go through it and say, okay, I did my thing. Here I'm at the end. Now here's my notes. Here's my cliff notes. This was cool. Yeah. I don't understand this. Why is this? That kind of stuff. So I think it'd be fun. So I'm excited about that. I'm still reading deeply into those books. They're right here next to me. So anytime I get a break, I just grab one of them and start flipping through it again. And I love them.
I've just got Planescape books up the wazoo because this is all I've been reading for adventure prep and stuff for Modron March.
Well, let's get to what Jordan has been playing. Well, you said you canceled, but you got some. Did you play anything else?
we've got 2 episodes out. And the first episode was kind of a silly get them out of Sigil, and I ran the Pungeon, which was fun. So the actual episode 2 was kind of the start of the adventure, and they arrive in Arcadia, and we had a lot of fun going through there, but all the Modrons are spilling out of the gate of Mechanus into the city of Arcadia, which is on the Outlands, for those of you who are Planescape fluent.
Well, so when you say spilling out, you mean in an orderly fashion. They're walking in rows.
They're walking. It's very militaristic as they come marching out at a slow pace. But my players are high level, and I kind of knew that they would probably take high level things. And so they were like, well, how do we get through the gate to talk to Primus? And I was like, well, I kind of thought you were going to do this. And the adventure doesn't have anything about them talking to the head of the Modrons, which is this deity-like creature called Primus that nobody really... Like, Primus doesn't interact with a lot of other creatures, and Primus specifically controls Modrons. Like, there's a Modron hierarchy, and he's literally the top Modron.
Yeah,
and so
you have to make an appointment with the first level of Modron, and then after you talk to that Modron, you have to make an appointment with the next level of Modron. Yeah. That's how you talk.
And they all are like scheduled 3 to 4 months out,
and
so it's going to take you
levels. Yeah. That's exactly. Make it as corporate as possible.
I've been having a lot of fun. They had to do a bunch of questionnaires and stuff to get into Arcadia. Yes. It was really funny. Yeah. For me, I guess I was like, I'm enjoying this. But they decided to push through the portal against the like waves of Modrons, and they got through. And on the other side, they were in Mechanus, and they're like, okay. And so they kind of like walked around. They talked to a gnome. They got a little bit more information on like what Mechanus is, and I think they all realized that like, oh, Primus doesn't like run this whole plane. He's just like an aspect of it. And I was like, oh yeah, like there's other creatures, there's other deities and stuff. This is the afterlife for a lot of creatures. The Modrons are just this weird byproduct of law kind of a thing. And they're like, oh. So then they go marching up, and they're just like, well, we want to see your Primus. And I'm like, no. Like the guards are just like, you're not doing that. And they're like, okay. Mm-hmm. And then LB said, well, I am Primus, so you should let me in. And she lied, and lying is against the law. And so then we had a fight. So because I used these really high level monsters called Maroots that are kind of like military Modrons. Like they're super, like they're like CR22. Like and I had 2 of them there because they were the guards for Primus, you know. And they don't roll to hit because they're like so lawful. It's just like, no, you take this much damage. Like there's no dodging it. And it's like, what? So poor LB took 60 damage. And then because they can attack twice, she took another 60 damage and went down. And then the other one teleported her body somewhere, and we don't know where it is. So for those of you who watch my game prep things on Tuesday night, when I was starting to feel pretty sick, I decided to run a game prep. And I wasn't going to do like a courtroom thing, but then the more we were talking, I was trying to talk myself out of it. The more I'm like, I think that would be the funniest thing. So I have a courtroom scenario, and I think I'm going to make the other party members like her lawyers, and they have to like fight for her and stuff. And this will work out because unfortunately LB's going to be gone on our next one. So I might have her like encased in carbonite or something, and they have to like fight on her behalf, but she's not allowed to talk or something.
Here's an idea, but could you go with your idea? But here's this idea. What if you go through the whole court thing and you make it as complicated, as a lot of questions as possible about your crime, and at the end of it, she's found guilty for lying, which is breaking the law, and she must pay 1 gold piece as the punishment.
Exactly.
But the thing is, that you go through all this anguish and all this red tape only to find out you have to pay a gold.
And she's like, I would have just paid it to begin with, kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah. But just to sink that in, that's how bureaucratic this is. And I like what you said.
Yeah.
Primus doesn't run Mechanus, but he certainly makes sure it doesn't stop running. This is the way I would think.
I mean, it's like this is all part of the process. You got to follow the law, you know? Yeah. So, but we're having a lot of fun with it. And it's going to be cool. So I think we are going to go that route. And I've been kind of in the game prep. We prepped a bunch of stuff. The game prep stream. And if you want to catch those, I'm trying to make them a regular time, but I am finding that I just can't. I can't commit to another specific time slot. So
it just has to be when you can.
Yeah. It has to be when I can. So I would say it's on the main channel. Turn on notifications or watch the chat, and I'll try to be like 10 minutes before, like, hey, I'm going to do this. Otherwise, they're still
post
up for
out
a little
to Twitter?
bit.
I think you normally post out to Twitter.
I normally do. I don't think I did the last one because I just forgot, but I normally will. So.
Yeah.
But those are a lot of fun because people can just kind of like, I like game prep streams where people are just like, well, I like this idea. Somebody had a really funny name, like, you should name the NPC this. I was like, yes, that's great.
Yes, it works.
So
you gotta have a red stapler bit in there is what I'm thinking.
Oh, of course.
There has to be a red stapler bit somewhere.
Of course. And then I have my Black Company game, which has been a lot of fun. And we leveled up to 7, and we got, we were able to commission a magic item, which is not something I've done in a game before. So our DM just said, find any rare magic item or less, and that's part of your reward is you can have it commissioned. And I was like, oh. And so like, us min-maxers are like flipping through the book like, oh, what a magic item we're going to get. And so I found one, and he's like, okay, it'll be ready in like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. They're working on it. And I'm like, that's great. So it's kind of cool because you can even customize your character more how you want in that way.
Right.
And I like that rather than just rolling randomly. I'm a big fan of rolling randomly, but like it's kind of one of those things. So we're fighting other guilds. I'm not entirely sure what's prepared for tomorrow, but we are playing tomorrow. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Sounds cool. I love the whole idea of the Black. Really,
there's all these rival
really,
guilds. Like we're part of one. We just got some territory that's adjacent to a rival guild, which is like good and bad because we can now spy on them easier, but they know we can. So they're like putting up barricades. It's been a lot of fun to like, it's a lot of information though. I'm having a hard time tracking, like, is it the black tips or the dark arrows, or is it the dark tips and the black arrow, kind of a thing. Like I get confused, but really fun. I need to just take better notes, honestly, because Nathan's making a fabulous campaign. It's been a lot of fun.
I really think at the end of it, when it's all said and done, we have to have him on the show to say, okay, let's deep dive into how this went, what you set up, what you were doing with it.
I'm sure he'd love to talk about it.
I have a million questions about
I'm sure he'd love to talk about it.
Black Company campaign. I love Black Company books so much. Glenn Cook, if you guys
and he does too. That's why it's all like he was basing it on.
I have read
these books are great.
These are the ones I probably read 10 different times, the same book. I just pick it up every 2 years and then reread the thing. I love it so much. Black Company's great. So I love that. All right, so you're playing tomorrow. But these aren't streamed or anything? These are just you guys
it's just
hanging
at
out.
his house, playing.
Regular
it's a lot of fun. At the table with dice. He's got all his miniatures and stuff. It's been a lot of fun,
That's awesome.
He loves the terrain. He buys a lot of the Dwarven Forge stuff, so he builds all these really elaborate things for us to play through and things. It's just fun. Like, I don't know. Like, Like, and this is Nathan, who I picked up at the game store, and I was like, "You guys seem cool. I'm tired of playing with randos at the game store. Do you want to come to my house?" And they're like, "Okay." Yeah. And he's just dived in and started. Then he started buying terrain and all this other stuff, and now he's got just as many books as I do, and all of these things.
Is he the one 3D printing too, or is that different?
Yeah, he's got the 3D printer, and so he 3D
guys,
prints our Hero Forge minis.
Your heroes,
for us.
Awesome.
It's really good.
Very cool. Very cool.
What about you? How's Dungeon of the Mad Mage?
Dungeon of the Mad Mage went pretty well because we had skipped before just like a week ago, and then we did play this Tuesday, and we able to fight a really cool, and again, spoilers for anybody that is playing Dungeon of the Mad Mage, but you've known this since I've been keep talking about it. We ran into a cool ambush of lava children, which I remember lava children from I believe it was the Fiend Folios, the first place I remember seeing like artwork on them and thinking, oh, these things are weird and cool and awesome. And so when they pop up all of a sudden again, it was like, oh, super nostalgia. They're not I don't think, those rules. They're very different, I think, in 5e.
Oh, they were in 1st edition and 5th edition. That's it. That's
so
funny.
Maybe I'm thinking of them in 1st edition, but I remember just the really iconic artwork of
that's probably the Fiend Folio, yeah.
Yeah, so very cool. Oh. Siren, you guys hear
Siren?
There's the Siren.
Boy, you know your books. Fiend Folio 1st edition. That was their first appearance.
Well, that was my favorite book. I must have gone through Fiend Folio a million times. I love that book the most. I think it's the best art of all time.
As we have a nice siren going on in the background. Oh, the Midwest. My other Midwest friends and family have sirens randomly. It's just funny.
Well, it's not random. It's every first Saturday of the month. Yeah.
To test it for whatever reason,
Yeah. See if
they are native to the fountains of creation. That's cool. So what? Oh, yeah, I guess we have to wait for a little bit longer. So Jordan has to tell some stories. So I've been reading. What have I been reading besides Planescape books? I think that's about it. Lots of really good Planescape books.
Well, have you ever encountered lava children before? Have you ever seen them or looked them up?
No. This is the first time I've seen them. I don't even know what book they're in for 5e.
Yeah, what's interesting about him, hopefully this guy shuts the siren off pretty soon, so I do apologize. But because like one guy will do it, and there must be a button in the room, and he leans on it. He's like, I'm going to do this test for 20 minutes. And then another person will go, just like a click, it'll run around once and they're done. They're like, I'm out of here. Yeah. This guy loves it, or I don't know who it is. But here's an interesting thing about lava children was they have this property that metal doesn't touch them. So when our Warforged tried to fight them with their magic sword, that's a metal magic sword, was not able to hit them. I thought that was an interesting kind of thing to have a creature that can't be struck by, a certain material type, and it happens to be a material type that all your players are running around with.
And even if it was magic, it didn't work?
That's what I thought. I was like, but that's the way. Now, he could have ruled it that way. I don't know if that's the actual rule, the way it's written in the Lava Children or not, but if it was made from metal, it does not hit the lava child. So I thought, oh wow.
Yeah, metal immunity. They can move through metal without hindrance. And it has advantage on any creatures wearing metal or using a metal shield. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and we have a Warforged. So then we always have the discussion of what's the Warforged made out of.
Oh yeah. You have to have, it's really loud. This is crazy. No, that's crazy because, you talk about that a lot with like the heat metal spell on a Warforged, for example.
Yeah, like what was your Warforged made from? How did you guys go through the whole idea of what it's made from and how spells affected you?
Yeah, so originally it was a combination of, originally 7 was almost like a stone, because that was back when it was, your AC was just this if you were a Warforged. There was no wearing armor. So we had my body be like a combination of stone and tree roots and stuff, and it was kind of like, I looked like a mechanical golem almost, and there were probably like metal parts or something. And then later on when Wayfinders altered and the actual Eberron book came out, we changed his stats to match those. And then I just took some plate armor, and then you like graft the plate armor to you. So I was kind of like Alphonse from Full Metal Alchemist is kind of how I looked at it. So
that's interesting. Yeah, because I think they're described with, leathers and there could even be wood, or there could be, different parts of metal. I was thinking almost like a ceramic or a material that maybe
ceramics known
is the way I would have kind of went. Like it's some type of alloy.
And that's what I meant by stone. Like I kind of thought it was like that. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. That isn't necessarily iron or, those. But I thought it was interesting to throw something at your players that all of a sudden your weapon just goes right through the creature and it doesn't seem to work. It just phases through. Good thing for us is I got a magic item that was given to me. That's my bow. And it's made from, this elven bow that's made from an elven special tree that grows in a special forest. But it splits into scimitars that allows me to fight with 2 scimitars. And I handed one to our Warforged so he could fight. It was a cool moment of, here's a wooden scimitar that works just great and it has all kinds of magical bonuses to it. So
that's kind of cool.
Go to town. Yeah. So it was cool to bring those things in and just, don't underestimate the coolness of describing the items you give to your players, especially like your magic items and things you give to them, because it could come up at any time that it might be something relevant. So when you give them that bow, take some time to figure out, what does it look like? What is it made from? Give it a little background history or something, because there's just some point where something could pop up and you could go, oh, wait, it's from this place? Isn't this guy from the place my bow is from? And it's like a connection you never would have known was going to happen, but did, because all of a sudden you threw this little tidbit out there of, here's the sword, and it's made from this stone and this whatever, and just something cool about it.
Yeah, because our Black Company, one of our players has a crystal rapier. And he's very, very like adamant that it's like, no, it's made of crystal. It's this like... purple hueish kind of like carved crystal, and it's like, okay. So he would have went to town on them lava children. He'd been great. So I'm gonna start doing this, monsters that are immune to a specific substance. I like that a lot. That's kind of cool.
So we had a lot of fun in there. I think we're getting pretty close to the end of this level, so I'm imagining maybe next session or the session after that we'll be going deeper. So if you're ready to go deeper with us on Tuesday night to see what the next levels are, because I feel like we're we're at the point where probably most groups have said, you know what, we've been dungeon diving for so long, we don't want to do this anymore. Can we play a different campaign, or can we go play some other adventures or something? But we're sticking with it. Like we're so far in now that we're like, we're not finishing until we get to the bottom of this thing. So we're going all the way through it. And it's been a long time just dungeon diving. So we play on Roll20. We play so you can see the how the lighting and the shadows work, and when people can't see very well, or they can, and miniatures moving on cool maps, and all the dice rolls are there and stuff. So it's really fun to go through that. We are a kind of a min-maxer group, though, so if you do come watch us, be prepared for some min-maxy characters trying to make their way through the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, but it is fun. And I'm loving this. My character is just so much fun playing the Eric Hokra.
Yeah, you've been having a lot of fun of it. It's cool.
Arcane Archer.
You get some art commissioned.
We did minis. So one of our guys spends hours building our minis on a Hero Forge.
Nice.
And then my artwork would definitely just be anything that looks like Moon Knight. Just superimpose it. That's basically what I tell my characters. I was thinking I want to get some art commissioned for some of my characters, some of my favorite characters, and then have the character, and then print out the last sheet that I had for them, and kind of make like a little collage, and then maybe like, I don't know, I could put like like the adventures that he went on or something. It would be kind of fun. I'm gonna
I want to build like a remember the character you played kind of a thing.
Cool. Like collage would be good. Controversial. Here's a hot take from Lucian. I keep looking at that AI generated concept art thing that a lot of people have messed with. Now I know it's got the artists. Yeah, I sent you more stuff.
Oh, okay. Gotta look at that.
Yeah, because it was like it's getting cooler and cooler and cooler. And I watched the Corridor Crew YouTube channel do something really cool with theirs, and I was like, oh my God, Jordan, we should be doing this with our characters.
Well, I want to know how you described the cliff. Because I want to start putting that in there.
Exactly.
I started generating cliff covers, and I was like, this will be cool.
Yeah,
so.
We should do that. We should pick a time when you're just goofing around and see if we can come up with something cool.
Well, maybe tonight. I'm
not saying for all you artists out there that are really, I know there's a big hot topic about is this a good thing or a bad thing, but for somebody who can't do art to be able to generate something by saying these are the words I want to use, and this is the image or the style or the genre I want it to be, and then this computer program makes it for me so that I can just have satisfaction in that. That's cool. I'm not trying to sell it. I get all the other problems with it, but it's cool to be non-artistic, but to be able to get something artistic from what I'm saying or what I want to get created. So that's kind of cool. My little version of it.
Very cool.
But wow, show goes by so quick, doesn't it, when you have a lot to talk about?
It does. And I have to go run and pick up my family, so I'm going to go do that.
Yeah, we lunch.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out. We'll be back. I will be in Seattle next week. We don't have a show.
I didn't even know.
I'll be gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So
I will probably stream a video game then, because I had a lot of fun last Saturday streaming. I jumped back into World of Warcraft.
Wow,
for the first time
you're playing Vanilla WoW or
4 years, 5 years? No, I jumped into retail.
Okay.
But they were just dropping Wrath of the Lich King, so I guess I should have jumped into Classic because that's where everybody else was. I was in the other one. I was like, but I wanted to play. The idea of it was I haven't been back in 5 years, I think, and I wanted to go through and play content or expansions I'd never seen or touched before. So I'm creating a character from scratch, and I'm going to the places that I never had done anything before. So it was really fun to go in and just see some of the cool things, and I'm really loving the character and having a lot of fun taking my time jamming through it.
I've been playing a lot of No Man's Sky. I finished Octopath Traveler, and now I'm playing No Man's Sky.
Is that on your Steam Deck or on your computer?
Yeah. So good.
Oh yeah.
It's all about Steam Deck.
You building big bases?
I started building a base. I actually have been trying to... I found a derelict ship, and I've spent the last 2 days repairing the ship. But it's such an addictive game. It's so good. Yeah. No Man's Sky is so good. Okay, guys, we'll be out of here. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Be sure to hang out with Lucian on Twitch, and goodbye, everybody.